All right, and welcome to another tale here. Someone requested this one. It's not as funny as the other ones, but I mean, there's some humorous moments. But this is my time. I was an English teacher in Japan, and I was there for the tsunami. So let me go ahead and let me just go ahead and change over to my work attire now. In Japan, what am I trying to think of? In Japan, you this is a very it's a very different mindset they have over there. So in Japan, we all have the same kind of uniform, all kind of like a draft business attire. I mean, everyone wore it, right? No outlandish colors. You might get crazy with an off-color tie, but that's about it. So I was an English teacher. Every Friday, I taught at a kindergarten school. I was Ego Sensei, and I would come in and I have all the little kids with me. I had three classes that I would teach. So the first class were like the smallest of the small. They're really like daycare, and I would go in there and I would say, like what's this? And they'd be like, oh, Usagi. I'm like, that's right, that's right. It's very good, kids, very good. It's a rabbit. It's a rabbit. And we would play games. So I would sing songs and be like, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And the kids, some kids were brighter than others, let's just say. Some kids were brighter than others. And they would figure it out, and we would run around. And then I go to the second group, which was kind of like pre-kindergarten. And I would do kind of the same thing. And they would join in, and we would sing songs, and we'd have a fun time. But eventually, we would get to the last group. And it was her graduation day. So it was her graduation day, and I had set up this entire obstacle course. And by the time I get to them, like my tie's undone, I'm missing buttons because I was very active with the kids, having a great time. And I set up this obstacle course with them, and so I had different little. Get out of here! Get out of here! You sorry, there's something on my desk. So I set this obstacle course, and I had all these different letters. And I get to the first one, I'd be like, "What letter is this?" And they'd be like, "That's a C." I'm like, "That's right, it's a C." And what does C stand for? They say cat or some other thing. But like, okay, today's gonna be crawl. And like, okay, so we all get out down to the ground. I would crawl, and they would follow me along, and we would fall. And then we get to the next letter. Like, what's the letter? Is this? And it's an H. That's right, it's an H. What is this? And like, oh, that's a rabbit. That's right. And rabbits hop. So let's hop. And I'm hopping, and the little kids hop along behind me. So I had this little trail of like kids. I had all the girls at this time. The boys were with their normal Japanese instructor. And eventually I get over to the last station. I'm like, what letter is this? And it's a J. I'm like, that's right, it's a J. You guys are just you're brilliant. All of you are just brilliant. And so so I look at my watch and it was 11:52. I'm sorry, 11:53. I remember it quite vividly. And I'm like, okay, J is for jump. Ready, jump, jump, and then jump, jump. And so we were jumping, and as I think it was the second time as I came down the land, the whole world, the whole the whole world, just started shaking, just moving all around, every which way. And if those that haven't been into Japan, I mean, earthquakes happen all the time. This one was quite different. Things started to come off the ceiling. Things were rolling. They had a little dais that was up because it was a graduation day, and I saw the other teachers, because normally teachers don't really panic. They just get the kids to safety and they move on. And so the kids didn't know much English, and I don't. My Japanese is reduced to like colors and animals, because the only people who want to speak Japanese to me are small children. And so I told them, there, run, and all the kids just ran over to their dais and hid underneath it. And I'm just standing there like, can't be that bad. And the other teacher's like, oh, quick, get underneath. So I get underneath, and we have, and underneath we're in this, this little. I guess I'll just use the cave because that's kind of just what it was. We were just there with the kids. I was just, they could almost stand, but I had to, get real low. And so the world was shaking, and it might have been 30 seconds, it might have been 15 minutes. I can't remember. It was probably the biggest I ever had. I never, of course, it was like second largest earthquake hit in history, so it was quite powerful. So the world's shaking, and the kids are starting to cry, and I don't know what this is. So we're playing Rochambeau which in Japan is simply rock paper scissors. They're not, they're not doing anything. Not kicking each other in the balls because that's the Rochambeau I know. But what am I? I'm just a little redneck. So eventually, the world comes back online, and we're not having to deal with that anymore. So we head out to this now. We worked on the second. I worked on the second floor. So I get out with the other teachers, and the kids follow us, and we get them all lined up, and eventually, so we get to the stairs. They can either take the steps down, but apparently in Japan there's like slides for kids. So I was just pushing kids down the slide. First kid goes down, and the next kid was whoop, and we get into the little like they have like a little area right in front of it. We all sit down, and they all just kind of, take notice. And that's when the tsunami warnings start going off, and all of our phones start bleeping. And of course, it's all in Japanese. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I had to go ask one of the other teachers, like, what's going on? I was like, oh, it's a tsunami warning, which they were all very concerned about. But we were a little too far inland, so I wasn't really concerned. I'm like, well, it's gotta go pretty far. Like if it's gonna hit us, it's gonna take out Tokyo. And being in the small town that I was in, like we were probably gonna be last on the rescue efforts since we're so far out. So eventually, that all finished up. So I took the taxi. Get out of here, kids. You're not part of the story anymore. So I take the taxi back to where I work, and just walking around and seeing everything there, and just like outside of the buildings, there's these pipes. Normally, they're flush with the sidewalk, right? So they're right at sidewalk level. But because the earthquake was so big, the soil around all the buildings had settled 2 or 3 feet. So the pipes were all sticking out 2, 3 feet. The building that I worked in normally had a little step that you just kind of hopped on, but it like one part of it was part of this, connected to the sidewalk, but the sidewalk had also dropped like 2 feet. So I had to, we had to like jump to get into work, and don't forget J is for jump. And so we get through that, and eventually we finish our work, and then we're like, well, what do we do now? Like all the trains were shut down because when an earthquake hits, the inspectors will go check all the tracks, and since it was so large, they're having to physically walk the entire line of train. And those who haven't been in Japan, trains are everywhere. They're everywhere, but they're physically walking the entire path, inspecting that there's no, nothing's gotten derailed. And so eventually, night comes, right? You can tell because of how dark it is in this Japanese apartment. But night comes, and we go to sleep, and we're sleeping there, and the tsunami warnings and the earthquake warnings keep going, because the earthquake will hit, and then the tsunami warning will go off, because it's just, we got hit. I think it was a 12 was the initial hit. For the next 24 hours, every 1 to 2 hours, we would have a 7 or 8 on the Richter scale go off. And when that goes off, then the tsunami warning goes off. And it has it. So I'm trying to lay there, go to sleep, but this like eerie Silent Hill music keeps going off. And the first time it woke me up, I'm like, "The fuck? What is this?" And it's like, it's hard to describe. You can look up the tsunami warning. From my understanding, each province has its own little difference, and it's like this eerie, like howling thing from the game or movie, The Silent Hill. And I'm like, this is it. This is how I die. Like the tsunami's hitting, and dark creatures from the abyss are coming out to destroy me. This is how it's gonna go down. And I was like, well, if I'm gonna die to dark creatures of the abyss, I might as well turn the lights on. Of course, once you turn the lights on, there's no dark creatures of the abyss. But I keep waking up. So the next day, I think, that was a Friday. But Saturday and Sunday, we had to work Saturday. So I was just at work doing my normal thing. Nobody really wanted to come in. And because Fukushima was our power plant, we started having these rolling blackouts because they had to divert power from other plants to our location. So we would have blackouts, every day, but at a different time. So, it'd be like 1 for 2 hours. We would teach our little lessons. But eventually, we got to get food, because yeah, it just seems like the smart thing to do, right? It just seems like what we need to do to get it done. Let's see, but one thing I will say about the Japanese, they are very good at, at being in line. Like this was a pretty typical scene for where I was right here. This is a pretty typical scene, and so me and my, well, it's now wife, but we had just started dating at the time, maybe a month. We're wandering around Japan, trying to find food. And of course, by the time we had time off from work, all the water had been bought up. All the because we couldn't use the water because there was. If you don't live in areas that have major storms, you get storm surges, and it'll push a lot of wastewater and contaminants into fresh water. So you shouldn't use like the water from the faucet after these happen. So there's no water. We're just buying like, I think it's called porcelain sweat, which is like a Gatorade. It's like a Powerade, like a sports drink, because it's the only thing we could get. Eventually, one of my students came and gave me stuff, but it was crazy. I spent probably, gosh, I don't know, like I say for a good 5 years after 5 or 6 years after the events, anytime stuff shook at just the right frequency, I would think an earthquake's going on. And sometimes I still do. When I'm at work, if I'm too close to the elevator, and the elevator goes up and down, it shakes the floor a little bit, and I think the earthquake's coming. And I get my heart rate goes up again. I'm like, oh God, not again. One time, maybe I'll mention another boot camp stories. I was on the bottom rack, and my I guess rack mate was on top, and he was just rolling around, and I thought an earthquake's happened, so I roll off the rack and get underneath the rack on the floor, and I'm like, oh, but then I'm like, wait, I'm in South Carolina. Like, there's no earthquake and tsunami is going to hit me in South Carolina. Anyways, someone requested the story about my time through the tsunami. I was a little too far inland. We went out and we helped where we could. But yeah, it was. It's really hard to describe. If you've never been through an earthquake, just the sheer magnitude of what happened on that day is difficult to describe to you. So that was a short one. I'm going to have a little more lighthearted one for next time. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, be sure to share and like the video. Bye.